A very good evening to all of you. Professor Nagarjuna, affectionately known as GN by students and colleagues, is a visiting faculty at the Institute of Science, Education and Research in Pune, ISER Pune. He was formerly a professor at the Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, and presently is establishing a living academy in Pune, a project of Kishore Bharati, an informal community learning center. As an educationist, he advocates collaborative learning practices, bringing cultural aspects of academics to the foreground and pushing content to the background of education. He'll be conducting two sessions, one today and the other on 3rd February at the same time, on how to understand and implement holistic and multidisciplinary approaches in higher education, informed by the latest developments in the history and philosophy of science and cognitive science. With a background in both sciences and the philosophy of science, I think we couldn't have had a better person to speak to us today and day after tomorrow on holistic and multidisciplinary education. Thank you, Professor Nagarjuna, for making the time to speak to us. And it's over to you now. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, and uh, good evening, all the participants. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my views on imparting holistic and multidisciplinary education. In case there is any problem with my audio or the presentations at some time, I hope somebody will let me know because I'm currently looking only at my screen at this moment. I just wanted to check the various parts of the presentation that I want to use today. So I hope most of the participants are either using their mobile or they're using their desktop because I'm assuming that this is an online presentation. So you already have some designs. So I'm also thinking to, uh, because it is an online event, it is very difficult to have conversation, right? And in fact, it should have been good if we had some kind of an opportunity to have a conversation with the participants. And since it's online, I have created a kind of a technological tool so that while the session is going on, you should be in a position to participate and write something, particularly when I want to ensure that you have something to say. And so let me go to the slideshow and look at the first things first. I mean, so of course, today we are in a session for an hour and then again a day after tomorrow. But I thought I want to take this opportunity to make sure that you will be in a position to contact and continue this engagement, because continuing an engagement of this kind, because the faculty development is not a one-time process. So it's important that we keep in touch with each other and keeping in mind the kind of uh, uh, points that I wanted to share. Uh, so just keep in mind this particular screen. So for those of you who are new to online presentations, one best would be to actually take the screenshots and make sure that you have the links, etc., available to you. I've given the QR codes. Uh, For the today's presentation, I want you to particularly look at the second QR code and hope you will be able to open the screen. Uh, so even if it takes about a minute or so, I would like to pause here and make sure that you will be able to open the second screen because I thought that is important for the today's session. So if you are able to see, uh, if you open the place, this is the place you will be able to join. You don't need any login to join. You just have to click the thing. I already see about 4 people have joined. May I know actually how many people are there in the thing, because I'm not able to see the.
Yeah, there are about 45 persons,
All
Professor.
right, yeah. So I just wanted to get an idea about. So even if about a quarter of them. So I just wanted to give you some kind of an idea in this tool that once you join, you'll be able to change your name. That might be better. You don't have to give your actual name. You can just put your. Of course, this question that we have to ask is, the question that we have asked for this this thing is how to impart holistic and multidisciplinary education. Of course, we will unpack the meaning of these questions as well. So I just wanted to provoke you by saying that the answer to this question lies in imparting academic habits. So, so there is another term that is also being made popular, and that is called STEM habits. So STEM here, let me expand for those of you who may not be using this term. This is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And some people also include arts in this, in which case the acronym actually becomes STEAM. So this is a kind of a overall broad umbrella under which uh, we're talking about. And then, of course, some people may get provoked about the idea that why did you use the term habits? For of course, the burden of this talk is actually to impress on you that why habits are actually important uh, and what does it mean. So I have just given some kind of classification of what are those academic habits here. So I broadly grouped them into 6 categories, and these are the largely widely used categories. So you may be able to see some of the things out here. Uh, but what is actually important is that each of them, we may not be having time to unfold all of these various habits that are listed here. We have archived them at metastudio.org, the site which I have also given you the link to, where, because when we say that, it is important to develop scientific temper or critical thinking and all that, these are just names. So it is important to find out exactly how we will be able to unfold and unpack each of these terms. So this is one of the outcomes of the research that was done at Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, TIFR, where we have sort of created about 60 to 70 such habits, which would require, of course, it is not necessary for every one of us to develop these habits, or any one of the students or teachers. It is required that at least some of these habits that are developed, then you actually be joining the game of academics in some way or the other. Now, let me also check some of the important pedagogical principles that are sort of put together, because keeping in mind, particularly, we are talking about higher education. So one important context in which, uh, you know, making or doing as a kind of an important activity, so the one best way to understand this is actually that uh, you know most of our higher education largely is in in the form of reading the materials that are there. That is, when you're reading something that is created by other people, whether it could be textbooks or it could be online material or whatever. In that case, you are presenting yourself as a consumer and not as a producer. So this is one important difference that the current meaningful learning models in cognitive science talk about. It is very important that each of us, as teachers as well as students, are required to have the experience of creating knowledge at some point or the other. Of course, when I'm talking about creating knowledge, it doesn't mean that you have to invent or something like that. It would also mean designing some things, uh, creating documents as well as publishing them, making drawings, and also conducting experiments and making and doing some kind of investigations. So the focus is a very important aspect of this thing. That is, making is an important pedagogical principle. And then the second important point, which is also been emphasized by a lot of educationists, and that is, we are not only talking about instruction, because particularly in higher education, it's very important that we have to inform the students that just carrying out the instructions is not enough in higher education, because we are actually expecting the people to help in constructing and also recreating and interpreting the content that is being delivered. And that requires us to have some kind of construction included in this. And it is also very important when some learning happens, the students are required to assess on their own that some learning actually took place. So that realization is very important. It is in that sense that it is common nowadays as a practice to also involve the students to participate in the evaluation process in some extent or the other, and that kind of a realization that learning is actually visible to the learner helps enormously in taking care of those things. Now, and in fact, that is one of the reasons why the last point is actually been kept in mind, saying that we have to make sure that there is some kind of a self-assessment happening. So, giving this kind of a competency to the students, you know, that they are able to assess themselves, because it is important for them to understand how to evaluate knowledge that they are consuming, and how to evaluate the knowledge that they're constructing. And this is an important aspect of that. With this little bit of introduction, I want you to open this page, and don't hesitate to write at various aspects if you really want to talk about it. So let me look at the first part of the aspect, which I wanted to focus here. Now, when I am talking about cultural aspects of education, I'm largely talking about habit formation. Now, why am I talking about this is because, largely when we talk about disciplines, like we have in almost all our colleges, the first thing that is that you register yourself to study some subject. It could be science subjects, or it could also be arts or sociology, or or any of the humanities subjects, or whatever subjects you have. As a result, our focus is largely on content, and which is largely also considered as some kind of substantive aspects. And content is disciplinary in nature. Any kind of content that you take will have some disciplinary boundaries associated to it. So therefore, uh, when we are talking about holistic and multidisciplinary education, it is very important for us to focus on the what you call the culture of engaging with the content. So this is the issue that we will be focusing on, uh, and this is also, of course, an important recommendation that I would like to request all of you to practice. And so we need to, for example, take some examples of that. Now, what do we mean by culture of engaging with the content? So some of the habits that have been coded will give you some kind of an idea about what do we mean by engaging with the content, and how do you mean by the habit. For example, an important habit that we talk about is seeking evidence. So when we hear something, or even when the textbook makes a proposition or a statement, one of the most important thing that you should be looking at is, particularly in higher education, is that do we have evidence, and what evidence does the textbook or the books that they are reading actually provide. And so this is an important aspect of seeking evidence. Now, where do you seek evidence? Because each of us may not be in a position to conduct experiments or do investigations. Even though we are in higher education, we may not have sufficient time for that. And as a result, therefore, it is very important for us, therefore, to find out where is the evidence going to come from. So one way of doing that, for example, would be uh, look up as a habit. Take, for example, I talked about something like STEM habits. Okay, so if you haven't heard, for example, what that STEM habit as a term means, and so one of the important thing that you also have to ask your students to get into is to get on to developing that habit. So look up again would mean as simple as, for example, open a new tab on your browser and, for example, type this question: what are STEM habits? Okay. So, and now you see that there is one, the second link out here is one of the links that directly comes from MetaStudio, where we have put together this platform. And this platform is designed to nurture the STEM habits. And so you have some examples of this. Okay. So we have, of course, I'm not going to discuss all these habits right now, but I just wanted to say this is what, for example, I would mean by look up as an important habit. So that is the way how I would look at anything. Suppose if any of the questions or the terms that we talk about require lookup as a habit, and then of course, oftentimes what happens is you may have a large number of results that come from the internet browser, and therefore you may not be very sure about exactly which one to look at. In such cases, of course, you would be looking at uh, your friends or your seniors, or asking other experts out there. So that is another very important thing. Seeking help is also as important a habit as anything else. So so I would also put together something like this, because I already mentioned about creating or making something. And then once you do that, what do you do after, as soon as we make something? Of course, we have to make it available for other people. So share it with others. Now, now this is one important aspect, that in a kind of a competitive world that we have been looking at, oftentimes students find it very, uh, very, unacademic, for example, to share their knowledge with other people. But this is one of the most important thing, that as scientists, for example, as soon as we have something to share, we publish in journals and we write about it on our websites. And so the objective being that we want to share those things with other people, and which essentially would mean uh, the peer group should be concerned equally about your aspects. Now, one may think that this will happen only when you are doing research and not exactly when you are doing or learning something. But often we have seen that you know in a kind of a classroom where there is a lot of discussion happening or a conversation happening. The today's cognitive science clearly tells us that the conversation is one of the main ways in which the engagement happens. When we're talking about the culture of engaging with the content, it doesn't happen alone. It doesn't happen even by reading a book again and again. It often happens when you start having some kind of a conversation. In fact, that is one of the reasons why the MetaStudio platform that we are offering for you to pursue is actually called a chatshala. in place of a Pathshala. While we can discuss how important Charshala is for understanding and learning, and this is another important aspect about how do you make some of these things really interdisciplinary, because most of the things that I'm talking about are not pertain to or bordered by any content. These are really academic habits that all of us have to, for example, inculcate ourselves as teachers, but also it's important that we make sure that the students certainly keep these things as objectives of learning something. Because whenever you talk about learning, they always have some content in their mind. But it is very important for them to understand that it is not merely the content, that some of the times it is important that the nature of the content that you're dealing with also requires to be reflected upon. For example, that happens as an example by what we call proportional thinking. Now, this is possibly, I would put something like this as as a kind of a discipline. I would put proportional thinking on a very high pedestal. So, may I just ask uh, the participants, uh, for example, to write something below this proportional thinking at this point, and think about a situation in your life where proportional thinking is not involved, or think about a subject that you are teaching where proportional thinking is not involved, which will also possibly give me an idea about whether, for example, you understood the idea of what is proportional thinking. Of course, it is always possible for you to look up and find out what proportional thinking is. Okay, so let us see what I meant by proportional thinking, so that it becomes a little clearer. So let's look at very uh, very beginning. For example, when because there are some things that most of us know. For example, Pythagoras, for example, was one of the famous persons who actually introduced proportional thinking in a very big way and encouraged people to think in terms of proportions. So, if you are talking about, for example, any geometrical object, let's say a circle or a triangle or whatever, you know, you immediately think in terms of what are the properties that particular object has. Like, for example, in the case of a circle, all of us know that circles radius and perimeter, okay, or even, for example, the volume, are related by certain proportion. Okay, so here we are talking about the kind of proportional relations between various variables. Okay, because there is a particular ratio that we, for example, when we look at a formula, for example, because a lot of people are afraid, a lot of students are quite afraid whenever there is a formula that appears. Actually, a formula is nothing but an abbreviation of a proportional thinking, because it very clearly talks about exactly what is the relation that different parameters or different variables in that particular which describing that particular phenomena actually are talking about. So in that sense, proportional thinking is of that kind. Of course, the moment you open your regular newspaper or any textbook or any subject that you want to look at, just look at some of the statements that are made and try to see how many of them are actually involve proportional thinking. Because in a way, without proportional thinking, most of the academics that we do is almost impossible. It's not only for mathematics or science, it's also for geography, it's also for social sciences and political science, and almost everywhere. We always talk in terms of certain variables. And variables are, of course, in a qualitative kind of discipline, you don't use the term variable, but you are talking about various properties and the relationship between those properties. And so this is a habit of thinking. For example, an academic always thinks in terms of the relationship between different uh, variables or different properties of the subject that he's dealing with. Now, once you develop this proportional thinking as a habit, of course, it requires a lot of effort on our part, and also to identify them from the content. So when you're engaging with the content, if you start deliberately looking for exactly what is the relations that are asserted in the text, and that really makes it very, very easy for us to identify. And these relations have to be uh, clearly made explicit. Now, this habit, if you develop, whichever be the subject, of course, I'm not saying that only teachers are required to develop this habit, but I'm talking about imparting this particular habit among the students. In fact, this opens up a lot of things. For example, most of mathematics becomes accessible to you, and a lot of formal knowledge about which in higher education people are afraid of dealing with in a regular way. As a result, they learn to learn it by rote, which is not what we are expecting. In fact, there is an enormous amount of emphasis in the education policy, and a lot of educationists keep on talking about it in terms of meaningful learning. And the learning should be something that is meaningful to the learner, and which doesn't happen unless there is this kind of an engagement that happens along with the people, along with the content. And that is the reason why I wanted to just put together and give some of these examples and saying that, so this is what I mean by culture aspect of it. This culture aspect of it, once it becomes imbibed and becomes part of our life, then whatever be the subject that you are dealing with, you will always be accepting it as part of your life. So this is just a kind of an example that I thought about. Just because I give a lot of importance to this, since I have given some examples and explained what proportional thinking is, depending on whatever the subject that you're dealing with, can you, uh, for example, type some of these examples? Maybe it may be easier for you to type at the bottom of this paper. So just give examples of proportional thinking in whichever the subject that you are talking about. Yeah, give some examples of proportional thinking, whatever be the topic that the teachers are teaching. Because I'm supposing that the different people, the participants today are coming from different subjects, right? If my assumption is right, it could be anything that they would be able to. You don't have to wait while the others are typing. You can always take any one line below this and then start typing. You can also introduce new lines. Yeah. So interestingly, I'm just annotating here some of the things here in terms of uh, you know the students giving importance to different aspects uh, of the thing. Like, so if one of them is interested in diagnosis and the other person is interested in the treatment plan. Now, so the point that I mentioned earlier about, like, for example, what are the indicators, for example, which help you to diagnose something? Usually, it is not just one indicator, right? You have to put together a cluster of those indicators, which will help you to diagnosis, because oftentimes the same symptoms may be there in multiple pathological issues. And therefore, it's very important to understand those things, and also the relations between those things and the manner in which we talk about it. And then, of course, based on that, the treatment sort of works out. So therefore, it's about the the relationships, between the indicator and the treatment, and which is established by experimental processes, and which is what helps you to look at it. So it is in that sense that I see a very clear proportional thinking in this particular example very clearly. And the other thing is, of course, that the second feedback that you see here is actually the reason why we need to engage. If there is no engagement in the class, for example, uh, we think that we have delivered the content and the textbook is also there for them to look at it, but then the understanding, different people understand differently, and this is a very well established thing. And because engagement uh, is largely about how we interpret the content. And interpretation, of course, is also a very important interdisciplinary habit, an academic habit as well. So that is how we make meaning, for example. And in this particular example that you talked about in statistics, of course, that all of us attempt to give real life examples. And so here, what we normally do is that we look at, for example, model. Okay? What is the model that uh, we want the students to understand? So model is often considered as a kind of a pattern. And in most cases, these patterns depend on proportional relations between the variables. And similarly, of course, and this is a very important aspect that has been mentioned here. This visualization is actually one of the most important things. And and there is a aspect called graphicacy, which we use in our literature in science education. Graphicacy, uh, as analogous to literacy, is how to decode the graphs and the pictures that are there. Now, this is also something that comes as a habit. In fact, I would say in higher education, there is not much emphasis that is given to graphicacy. How to read graphs, how to represent a lot of set of data in the form of patterns. Uh, so this is what the term graphicacy could have been new to many of you, but it essentially means looking at the diagrams and the patterns, etc. Even thinking in terms of diagrams, that is another important habit. Thinking in terms of diagrams is a very important interdisciplinary academic habit, uh, which is, of course, for physicists it is very common, but and mathematicians also use diagrams, etc. And biology uses it almost all the time, because diagrams are the only important access to many of these things. So I thank all of you for giving this feedback, and of course, this I'll keep this pad open. So please keep typing if you have something to talk about it. Uh, okay, and yeah, this is an important issue here. You know, uh, reading, listening, watching, which is best for understanding with. And so this is one of the important things. And so this question actually has been addressed by a lot of models. And that is actually one of the reasons why I would like to say something very important here. And this is actually also the reason why I'm talking about, culture of engaging with the content. Okay, let me write it in a provocative way here. There is no depth of content for the students. In fact, I would also say there is no depth of good, uh, lessons availability on online, but particularly because one of you mentioned about the thing. So what is missing is the engagement with them. Like there is absolutely no problem if students are actually largely looking at YouTube videos and things like that, which is because that is basically the question here. So how do you address this? If I were you, what I would do is I would instead of actually delivering any lesson in the class, which is what I mentioned as patshala, for example, I would use my classroom time for chatshala, because the almost for every topic you take, there are always good content that is available online. So in fact, it is one of the best things that you could do is you can yourself curate some good content based on your own judgment and ask people to watch and come to the class for a chatshala instead of a patshala. And this is a widely followed practice nowadays in a large number of higher education institutes. And the other thing that you could also do is to ask the students to make a presentation after they see those YouTube videos. And in fact, that is when you'll also come to know whether they have sort of understood or not. And this is also an important way in which the 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 engagement issue actually becomes very important. The reason why they go to YouTube is also because there are really very good quality engagement that happens on that. And oftentimes it is very difficult for people to read rather than listen to the things. There is a reason for that. There is also the reason is that it's also important that most of these people also use diagrams, or as I call it as graphicacy, while these YouTube videos are going on. So they look at they relate it to the local content, the everyday content that is available there. So even if the questions are very very difficult, it is easy for us to make use of the multimedia that is accessible to the students. And that is why I'm emphasizing that there is no dearth of good, bad, or ugly content in the world. So that's why content is not what in higher education we should be really worried about, but what is important is the idea of uh, idea of engaging with them. Now I have given you some ideas about how to engage, but now I want to go back uh, to the presentation and want to talk about a very important aspect of the engagement, which is about because the NEP also talks about lifelong learning. you know so this is a person, and he's a professor at MIT Media Lab, Michel Resnick, and he has a book by the same title, Lifelong Kindergarten. It's a very easy, accessible book, and I recommend all of you to read this book. Now, what is he talking about is how do you engage people? Of course, he's not only talking about higher education, he's talking about education in general. And what he's talking about is there are these 4 P's that are written here in the subtitle of this, cultivating creativity through projects, passion, peers, and play. And now, as he's talking about, he's not talking about learning by consuming content at all. He's not asking about create good lessons. He's not talking about delivering good lessons. He's talking about give students projects. Give students projects. And this is also something that I want to link it to the point that I mentioned earlier about construction and making. Because when you give projects, students have an occasion to create content on their own. Don't worry if the content is bad. That is not what is important. What is important is that passionate association of engaging with that content. And of course, since it is a project, it is often possible that it can be done collaboratively with a group of people. So if you have 40, 50 students, I mean, you can create some kind of 10 to 15 teams and each team may be given some project. And then when, in fact, what I always found out is that from my experience, when I am teaching, you will always see some students, not attending the class. But then when one of the student is actually presenting in the class, everybody is listening to what the student is talking about, irrespective of whether the student actually has the ability to speak very well, or he has a stage fear or whatever, doesn't matter. But they're very keenly listening to their peer group, not as much as listening from the masters like us. Now, this is also something that is being talked about, and that is also the reason why I mentioned that when you uh, engage the students in the classroom and have a discussion, that always works out quite well. All right. So this is another model of projects. Now, maybe I will again go back to the pad, and maybe at the bottom of this place, uh, I am just putting the idea of projects. I just wanted to get your feedback from you. How many of you actually use projects in uh, your teaching methods? And what kind of projects do you ask your students to do? Can you quickly write down some of the project ideas? I'll halt for a few minutes. Okay. Comparative election studies. Yes. So in this case, the source of the data comes from, I suppose, newspapers. Okay. Yeah, there is a lot of data, particularly in astrophysics, available and freely available for download. And recognizing patterns in the data is a big challenge. Yes, of course, programming languages, lot of mini and mega projects can be given. And interestingly, when you are doing a project, there is one important aspect in project that people have discussed. This is a cognitive aspect of it. So I want to specifically write about it here, uh, maybe as another point. Uh, Project skill time. Essentially, it means that the students forget about the day and night. Often, the meals. This is an experience that all of us have. So this is one of the important aspects of it, because when I'm talking about the cognitive aspect of engagement, okay, because this is engagement is what we're talking about. Now, how does engagement enter into somebody's life? Engagement happens when we are making something. If when you're actually making something, engagement happens, and that is when we forget about time. And why? Naturally, because you forget time when you are completely lost and focused about the tasks that you're doing. And this is a very important cognitive parameter. And do look for, uh, as I asked you to look up often, so there's a technical term called flow. So read about it online, about what is this thing called flow. I'm giving you one clue here. So actually, there is a book by the same title. called The Flow by Mihai. And that sort of gives you an idea about why projects are important for education. Particularly, of course, it's good for all stages of education, but certainly important in higher education as well. So if any of you want to add more projects, please add them here. Just wanted to make sure that, and if you are not asking students to do any projects, please do. And projects are not only for science subjects, but I mean, in geography, in sociology, even in philosophy, I mean, when I teach, I do give projects to students. So almost every project, every subject is amenable to projects. And particularly if the project has some kind of collaboration with some peer group, then it's even interesting. Because after you complete your project, you come back to the class and make a presentation. And in that process, some of the important parts of that thing that I mentioned, particularly some of the STEM habits are part of that. Like, for example, in this thing, I talked about multiple of them. So one of them is related to communication. So the communication habits are interdisciplinary habits. And like reporting citation, for example, is one of the important aspects. Like, where did you get this idea from? Where did you read about it? And giving evidence, for example, also often involves giving citation as well. And I don't know how many of you are actually taking notes. And note taking is an important academic habit. And of course, this is something that I keep telling all my in all my training camps, is that note taking is possibly one of the most important habit that somehow in India we have not been encouraging people to do. And also writing journals, and also, for example, at the end of the day, how many of you, for example, ask the students to, for example, find out what are the take home points of that particular day, whatever it be? That writing notes on their own is something that is very, very crucial from a cognitive point of view. So these are some of the soft skills. I mean, people call this as a soft skills. So soft skill is just another way of saying that these are interdisciplinary skills. These are interdisciplinary competencies that are out there. And all right, so this is another important point of about this whole thing. And so there are, of course, quite a number of aspects that one needs to look at. I'll keep the STEM habits slide here. And while this aspect is right now talking about it here, that is, these are the academic habits that I'm talking about. And cultivating these habits can be an explicit objective of your teaching on a day-to-day basis. And I want you to look at some of these things, and maybe ask me questions, because that is very important. You can also write questions here in this pad, because as I said, feedback is important to a teacher, and I want your feedback today. Ask me some questions, and particularly tell me whether whatever I've said so far actually doesn't have much content, right? Because I decided not to come with a long PPT presentation or a slide presentation. Instead, I'm talking about I've come with little content, because I wanted to focus a lot on the culture of engagement. So I want to make sure that you know, you are engaging, and one of the important indicators of engagement is that there should be some questions. So let me gather some questions from you. Of course, there may be some people who are not on the Etherpad, but please don't hesitate to, uh, in that case, ask questions. If you could type them even in the chat box, I'm sure they will be relayed to me by someone, or you can even cut paste them as well into this chat pad as well, so that all of us can see. So, if I understood correctly, I mean, so how to be more precise while writing projects? I'm assuming that these are like projects that you write for grants, etc. Uh,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
that's what I'm assuming it to be. So, you know, a lot of people assume that, you know, the best projects are actually those which you know, use language that is not ambiguous. Okay, which is another way of taking precision. But you know, the point is, you know, how do you develop rigor? You know, this is basically uh, rigor. Rigor essentially means that use terms that have clear definitions. You know, instead of using terms from a regular language, and that is basically what we mean by uh, technical language, right? Of course, I'm not saying that, you know, just use technical language whether you understand it or not. But what I'm trying to say is that that is how, you know, when we read reports or even project proposals, this is what we look at. You know, how whatever statements that are made in the project in terms of the goals, etc. And the second important aspect, of course, is that is the project goals tangible? You know, keeping in mind the resources, etc., that are available to you, and making it clear. And another important thing is that uh, did you identify gaps before proposing the project? So these are some of the important aspects. And oftentimes, you know, we don't uh, declare assumptions, and the model that you will be using for the project. This is very important, and often this is how the evaluators would know whether you understand what you're doing, you understand what you're proposing. And so these are some of the suggestions that I would give for the question that you have asked. I hope that gives you some kind of an idea about these skills. And these are not particularly related to the subject matter, but you need to be very clear about the content of that. Of course, these are very generic in nature, naturally, because I do not know for which subject you are intending to write a project proposal.
There is one question in the chat box which says under NEP students have to select major and minor in first year, but she's
Mhm.
confused how to deal with this.
Okay, they have to select a major and a minor. Is that what you said?
That's what they say, yeah. I mean, major subject and minor subject.
Okay.
In the first year, I presume is of the undergraduate program, but she's
Yeah.
confused as to how to deal with this.
Well, I really haven't understood uh, the the problem in that, because it largely depends on the courses that the college is offering, right? Maybe I haven't seen the the question in its proper light. Why should there be a problem if there are sufficient choices available to the students, in the sense of which is the minor and which is the major? Is that the problem?
I'm also not sure what she means.
Right, right.
Dr.
It's very
Sangeeta, you want to unmute yourself and just express yourself?
yeah, yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
yeah, yeah. Of course, very
Yes, sir.
clear.
Actually, our college is autonomous college, and we have implemented NEP from this academic year only, that is 23, 24. And
Mhm.
in the first year, as per the NEP, in the first year, student has to select major, minor, generic, and everything. Okay.
Mhm.
So when the student comes for in our college, and we ask them to select major, minor, first of all they had no idea what is NEP and how to select the
Mhm.
subject and all that.
Okay.
So they were little bit very confused. Then we had to explain them, like for FIBSC, I'm a science student. So in FIBSC, suppose we are having a combination like PCM. So
Mhm.
physics, chemistry, maths. So maybe physics may be your major subject, chemistry is your minor. So likewise, as per your choice, you selected. So they have selected, but later on, after 1 month or 2 months, they are coming and saying, no, we don't want this combination. We want some other combination. So in
Mhm.
that case, what to do now?
Yeah, since you said that your college is now autonomous, NEP actually suggests something important here, and that
Oh,
is that the subjects and the course that you're offering
yes.
doesn't have to be only physics, chemistry, and biology. Like suppose if you are asked, if you're giving, for example, a course on physics, chemistry, and mathematics, let us say, I'm just
Okay.
assuming that that's one of the options.
Yeah.
Then, apart from that, the university, your college has a lot of subjects, right?
Yes.
If the student is interested in some other subject,
Okay.
not from your department or not from the science department,
Yeah.
so NEP encourages students to even take those courses.
Yes, sir. Right.
So it is in that sense that you have to understand what is major and what is minor.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
see, that is what I'm talking about. You see, the interdisciplinarity has to be understood in multiple senses. One of the senses is that if you are a graduate, you have learned, developed academic habits. It doesn't matter in which subject,
Yes.
right? So once you have developed and become a graduate, that means you have already developed certain academic habits. It doesn't matter which subject it is. Like suppose if that person has some interest, let us say in geography, or sociology, or even literature, for example,
Okay.
they can take courses in that as well. So it depends on what kind of liberal structure your college has,
Okay. Okay,
and
sir.
your college is now capable of doing that kind of exercising that kind of an autonomy.
Uh,
So in fact, in some cases, they've also created some kind of clusters, in the sense that suppose it is not in my college the course is offered, but it is in a neighboring college.
okay.
Then it is important for your colleges to come to some kind of a memorandum of understanding, such that your students can actually go and take courses from the other college, and they should be in a position to credit them as well. And NAP encourages you to do such understandings.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In
You are
fact,
right. But ours is only science faculty college.
but that's
Yet,
precisely the reason why, since you do not have the capability to give science courses, other than science courses,
okay.
okay,
Okay.
it is important to collaborate with agencies close by and come to an understanding and inform your students that, look, if you have interest in something else, you can do that as well, as long as you complete all the credits
Yes,
that are
sir.
required for graduation.
Yes, sir, you are absolutely right. Maybe in this academic year 24-25, we are doing some MOUs with other colleges like commerce, arts, and law colleges and all that. So, as you said, you are absolutely right that we have to give more choices to the students.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Dr. Shalini Agarwal, you have your hand up. You can unmute and ask your question.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good
Sir,
evening.
I just wanted to add my 2 cents on this, that probably if the direction in which the student is headed, like what kind of employment is being sought after, what kind of profession or vocation the student is looking to enter, if that could be factored in, it would be easier to select the minor and the major subjects, like you rightly said, in spite of Dr. Meshram's college being a pure science college, they could adopt other subjects based upon what the student is looking to achieve from the program. If that could be factored in, like, so we have student counselors who could, help to select the right mix so that a direction is established.
Mhm. I don't know. This is certainly not. I mean, the question that is asked here, for those of you who are not looking at the pad or the screen, so it says that PhD students admitted under NEP. Actually, PhD students are not admitted under the NEP. They're admitted under some university, and they have to follow the
Yes.
norms of that university or institute. NEP doesn't talk anything about publications by PhD students or something like that. I think this is certainly, I would assume, a misunderstanding. And NEP doesn't stipulate anything of this kind. And publication is nothing but, communicating with your peer group. And communicating with the peer group is a necessary habit. Whether so therefore it is not sufficient to just do the work. It is important to inform that work with the peer group. It's a very important aspect about it. And in most of the good institutions that I am aware of, and that habit is encouraged right from the beginning when the students join the PhD program. And we also read other people's communications as well. Oftentimes, some of our PhD students actually review other researchers' papers as well. Because they are, as researchers, you're also supposed to give feedback to other people's research. So it's part of the developing those academic habits, giving feedback, seeking help, and communicating your work with everybody else. It's important. I don't think NEP eliminates or anything like saying that publications are not necessary. Not at all. I don't think even UGC says that. So this is you are referring to a fourth semester student of a MSc. That is, you are talking about an MSc project. And in that MSc project, of course, he would be writing a paper which is a term paper. And in the institutes that I am familiar with, both at TIFR as well as at ISER Pune, for example, we encourage students to write term papers, even thesis projects. And those projects are evaluated by a team of examiners. Within and sometimes even external examiners are invited. But we don't insist on paper getting published. And yes, we understand the possibilities of this. In fact, so there is no such requirement that the papers have to be published, but it's important that they write the papers. The papers in the sense that the project report and the thesis have to be written and also presented to the colleagues in a seminar and all that. That is the mode of examination for most projects that is followed in higher education institutes. Professor Sakya, what I have decided to do is to talk about some of these interdisciplinary academic habits today. And in the second talk, I wanted to talk more about holistic aspects of the thing. So
Okay.
that's the way how I have sort of divided. And in that, I would like to give some examples of, uh, what does it mean to inculcate holistic aspects, because it is not always sufficient to be just interdisciplinary for holistic aspects, and that is where we would be talking about transdisciplinary uh, models that are very stimulating to think about, which are also getting popular in many of the subjects. So I wanted to talk about some of those themes in the second part of the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Professor Nagarjuna, and thanks very much to all of you.